Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Northview Podcast. I'm joined with Pastor Nathan Rector and just super glad to have him back. It's actually been a few weeks since we've had Nathan on. So, Nathan, in the past few weeks, what's been going on? Anything fun?
Yeah, man. Well, I'm kind of slowly starting to transition a little bit more into the office. I mean, we're still kind of in a hybrid mode, but so that's been a little bit different. But we've just been doing home projects, and the weather has been so back and forth. There's been some good days, and then there's been some days that have been really
Yeah,
crummy and either rainy or just way too cold.
yeah.
So
I mean, as
um,
of filming right now, it's potential that we'll have snow on
Well, I had not heard that, so you just depressed me
Friday.
now. I'm like, I did not know that was coming, at
Well, it
all.
might not happen, but it's
Yeah,
Indiana and it's May.
I was hoping to wear shorts or thinking about wearing shorts today, and I changed my mind, when I was getting ready. And
Right,
yeah, I'm definitely done with this back. I wanted to get warm and stay warm, and
right.
but we're hanging in there. We're hanging in there. You guys doing all right?
Yeah, we're good. We did our first birthday with this whole new
Yeah,
kind of way of doing things, and so I told my daughter it'll never be this good again, because we just tried to shower her with love and a lot of time together, and like next year you're back in school, man, so just
yeah, yeah.
enjoy this for what it is. But I will say we were disappointed. We were looking forward to Black Widow opening up this weekend. I know that I'm a huge Marvel movie fan, and Gianna is taken with that as well. So we were bummed that all these big movies got pushed back. So oh well.
Yeah, I'm kind of a fan of them speeding them up and getting them into our homes a little faster. We just rewatched the newest Star Wars last night.
Yeah,
That's one we'd already seen in the theater, but I know there's been some others that have been hurried along
yeah,
and moved up a little bit. We've appreciated that because we seem to be running to the edges of our queue on
right,
movies to get. The Last
right.
Dance has been the best must see TV in our household.
I
We've been
agree.
eating that up big time, but
I agree.
I just wish there was a little more there. The weather on bad days, you're really reminded of that.
So I mean, I hate for our people that could care less about sports, but I got to ask, like, with Isaiah Thomas and the Bad Boys walking off and not shaking hands. I mean, can you imagine a team doing that today in the scrutiny? Do you think they would get a pass?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that wouldn't have happened or would not fly that were back there. I mean, I think there are a lot of players that played back then that are glad that there's not Twitter and there's
Right,
not people with phones everywhere. But yeah,
right,
man. I mean, growing up a huge Jordan fan, huge Bull fan, man, I did not. I mean, I hated the Pistons. Just did not
right,
like them. And
right.
I kept pausing that documentary, just to give a little more commentary to my family, specifically
Right.
to my kids at different junctures about, man, I didn't like these guys. Oh, I remember when that happened, kind of thing. So
Yeah, it is
that's been good.
interesting, and we'll jump off of this. I can't believe Rodman became a Bull with the Pistons, background, and we see
Yeah,
that all the time today. But
yeah.
I don't remember ever. Anyways, hey, before we got a couple topics that I want to talk to you about, but I want to jump into your sermon, and we're going to jump right back out of it. But you talked about a car, fancy, fancy car in the beginning of your message this past weekend. So, I mean, I am
Yeah.
curious if you had the option between a fully loaded, like, Camry, with all the bells and whistles, or even like, let's talk about a nice Jeep Renegade or something like that. Would you take that over a classic car, or would you go classic all the way?
Well, I mean, I guess it would depend on what the classic car was. If it was the car that I was describing Sunday, 1989 Lotus Esprit Turbo, I would take the Lotus every time. I mean, that car, it just had stop ya ability,
Mm,
and I don't know, some cars just have that, and
yeah,
it definitely captured for me as a 15-year-old boy. I mean,
Hmm.
it captured the little boy in me, and just the kind of car that you might only see in Matchbox form was
Right.
right there on the street, and you could look at it, you could touch it, and I even got to ride in it. So it was pretty remarkable.
Okay. No, that's fair. I think I would go fully loaded, just more comfort inside. I could care less what it looks like on the outside. But all right, last car question. If you like, what's your go-to car movie? Like, are you a purist,
Well,
like Gone in 60 Seconds?
that's where I was just going. That's the first movie that came to my mind.
Yeah.
Was Gone in 60 Seconds. Yeah, I don't know. Like that must be it. That's where
It's,
my
I mean, you're just getting all the different cars. You're getting action.
yeah
You've got,
yeah
Nick Cage in his prime.
yeah.
So,
That's
all right.
another one we watched in quarantine. We watched that, and it was good to talk about Eleanor, and I always talk about Eleanor with my dad, and he's got
Hmm.
this kind of thing about maybe getting a convertible, and he's been looking at one forever. So I'm always asking him if he's found Eleanor yet. So that's a
Right.
connection to that movie.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So, when we're filming this, we are a church in Indiana. Our governor has just kind of opened Indiana up for the first time, and
Mhm.
in a interesting way, he really kind of let the churches make decisions on what they feel like is best for their congregations.
Yeah.
What has kind of driven you in our leadership into making the decisions that we are making as a church?
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and one of the things we've had to do is make sure that we're not coming into the conversation from the wrong motive or the wrong perspective, and we have a heart to be faithful to God. We have a heart to be faithful and serve and love our people, and we want to be good citizens as well. And so we're really kind of taking it all into consideration. Frankly, some of it was a timeline thing where we were a little surprised that it was opened up as quickly as it
Hmm.
was. I think there's a perception that is so broad and so spread out among people that many, no matter what the date is, are still very cautious and very careful. I think one of our things was we were not interested in being the first back. Like that held no particular spiritual merit badge for us. I think that's one of those things on a snow day or on different situations like that where the power goes out or the we don't have heat in the building or air conditioning in the building. There's a part of you that just says we can get through this, we can muscle
Right.
through, we can power through. And I
Right.
think the race, you can almost even see like there's a race to get back, and as soon as we can, we will. But we recognize that there's still a lot of things that need to be put in place before we can open up properly or in this particular moment properly.
Hmm.
And we needed to make sure that we did that. And we also felt like that there needed to be a little bit of objectivity in some of our timeline, and not just what I think or you think or somebody thinks. But we found some level of comfort in the idea of adopting the May 24th date. That's a date that Indiana right now is targeted for stage 3 of this revitalization reopening plan. And that's when businesses, retail spaces, malls, and others are starting to open up with limited capacity. We thought that makes a good threshold for us, size wise, and the kind of services that we think we want to put on, because we've got a real responsibility to our people, not to be reckless and foolish with the way that we gather. And so that date really seemed like a date that we could mark and have an on ramp to that's not too far away, but yet
Right.
isn't this Sunday. I know there's some that'll be disappointed that we're not meeting this Sunday. We got some that are amazed that we're even having the conversation that it's in this month. So
Right.
again,
Right.
people are so spread out in it, and really, Sean, what we kind of came out of our conversations with was people are very, very different, and they're going to stay in a different space on how they feel most comfortable or what their situation should allow. People over 65 are still being encouraged to wait in Indiana at least till June 14th. So we recognize that for many, that's probably when their start date will be, and not on May 24th, and that's
Right.
okay. We also know that there's some who simply are not able to connect or have not been able to find very good connection, that at least what they desire, with some of the other means, online or otherwise. We see though that as we move into from stage 2 to stage 3 as a state, that we really now have an opportunity to put out three ways that people can be connected with our mission. They can worship together, whether virtually or in person. And that would be online, that would be
Mhm.
in small groups, or that would be on site, like we said, starting on May 24th. And Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 12 talks about this idea that a three corded strand is not easily broken. And I just kind of grabbed a hold of that imagery a little bit. And as we think about kind of connecting with people through this time, uh, our three corded strand is our online offering, our online service, our small groups for those that are comfortable and not at risk and willing to meet in that way. It may even
Right.
just be small groups of family, like family or friend groups that are comfortable with each other.
Right.
And then lastly, the on-site physical gatherings. That's kind of our three-corded strand, that we see, and we want to legitimize all three of those. Like there's not one that's better or the other, depending on your situation or your health risks or your situation. One of the three might be way more attractive to you. It may even just be your personality. One of the three is way more attractive, and so we believe that starting on the 24th, we can start to move forward with all three of these, available,
Mhm.
and out there. And knowing that for people, many of them, one of these is going to be, you may be online for months, not just a few more weeks, but it may be months. We're going to continue to stay online with you, and we're going to connect you to everything we've been connecting you to and more, through
Right.
that time. For others, a small group is going to provide some personal contact, in a safe way, in a predictable way, but it's much more controlled. It's much more contained. We want to come around those people, with resources and leadership and help any way we can. And obviously physical gatherings, they're going to look different, but we believe that we can start, here in a couple of weeks. We can start that conversation, and
Right.
people are going to have to be patient, and they're going to have to understand that it's going to look different,
Right.
than what you left in March, at least for a while. But I know for some people that's still going to be better,
Right.
or in their mind, in what they would like, that's going to be better. So long as we can do that safely, we'll do it.
Right. And I think what's exciting is, I mean, really, in a sense, you could experience all three over 3 different weeks, and you're still part of Northview.
Yeah.
You're still part of the body of Christ here in Danville and wherever like, I think that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, we've always had these, or at least two of these three. The online was coming in just a matter of months, but the difference right now is we're legitimizing them. I think in even a different in on a different level of seriousness, because we recognize, um, these may be the only connection people have for several months. And so that's cool. That's great. We understand it. And how
Mhm.
can we support you and love you and keep you connected to the church? We sent out some messaging, Wednesday, about this. And we are still one body, even though we're connecting in three very different ways. We're still one body, and God is still uniting us together. And
Yeah.
I think this is going to be one of those moments where this even this reopening conversation and how we come out of that is going to have,
Yeah.
some lasting impact on us for a long time.
Yeah. I think it's cool, kind of behind the scenes for people that don't, I guess, know what we do. Sometimes in our staff meetings, I remember sitting at a lake house as a staff praying over how do we move into the digital world. And we definitely were working towards that, but this happened in a
Yeah,
way.
a pandemic wasn't on our whiteboard,
Yeah. Right.
um, but it shoved us in there faster and more fully than we were before, and we're there now, and we're grateful
Yeah.
for it.
Cool. Well, I know we'll be talking more about what this looks like and fleshing that
Yeah,
out. And it's cool to have the
yeah,
podcast to be able to, have a more of a dialogue conversation about
yeah.
this. I am curious, you know, 10 years from now, when our kids are watching movies, let's just say that were made in 2015, what are they going to see and go, "You guys did that"? Like I saw a funny meme about blowing on a cake or blowing candles out on a cake. Like, will
Oh
we
man,
ever
hadn't
do
thought
that
about
again?
that. Yeah. Yeah, there's gonna
Any
be. I hadn't thought about that. There's gonna be some lasting. There's gonna be some lasting, marks. I saw again a meme about a different way to greet people, and it was instead of handshakes or fist bumps, it was just sweeping the leg and putting them on their back. I don't know that that
right?
was gonna work, but yeah, there's gonna be some things that. Are just going to be different. I mean, because it looks like our next 6 months are going to be very different. I mean, that's long enough
Yeah,
to develop some serious
yeah,
changes of patterns. And yeah,
yeah,
I really don't know. I could change. We talk about sports a lot, how we take in sports, and we're all in the church world, obviously, school, church, all these different gatherings. We're being cognizant of
right,
that are out there.
right. So let's transition into the message that you just got done sharing about, and it's a phenomenal story, and actually story within a story, a little
Yeah,
inception kind of going on. Um, why did you pick it? I just want to, you could pick
yeah,
just a variety of different stories
yep,
of Jesus getting close to people, but this one seems so pertinent today.
yeah. Yeah, the theme of uncomfortably close. We just kind of uh, did a. I can remember kind of just thinking through a list of stories that had different angles, different main points, but we're kind of unified in this awkward, uncomfortable moment where they encountered Jesus, and it got real. And on the other side of all that awkwardness, there was real life transformation. But man, it really had to. It was uncomfortable, and it was uncomfortable for all different reasons. This week, uh, you've got you got like you said, two stories, two individuals. You've got a synagogue leader who is, you know, to say he's stepping outside of his faith is maybe a slight exaggeration and overstatement, but I mean,
Mm,
he's definitely not. He's not going the traditional path in this way in his moment of need. I mean, it would be similar to a Christian going to a mosque, I guess, or something
mhm.
like that. I mean, it would just feel weird that they were going to go down that road,
Right,
and it just. I think that's it's awkward. All of his leaders, um, people probably thought this was awkward. This was weird. Maybe that was even uncomfortable for them. It might have been
right,
scandalous for them to hear about it. And then you also have this story within the story. Is this woman who, and again awkward. This menstrual bleeding situation. It appears, and you know, no lady likes to talk about that. And this is her plight and her condition for 12 years. And Jewish customs of the day made her life a living hell because of it.
right,
And I mean, she was a 12-year quarantine, isolation, go
right,
crazy type person. And yeah, this just you just had. I guess the more I thought about it, the more perfect it felt for this uncomfortable encounter with Jesus theme.
right. One of the things that you said in the sermon, kind of a refrain, was "When I went out, Jesus went in," and I
Yeah,
think many people would say, maybe skeptics or people just not sure if God would say that God's a pretty impersonal God, and that doesn't want to really get into people's business. But these two stories are kind of flipping that on its head. Why would that refrain, like when I went out, Jesus went in? Why is that so impactful today?
boy, I think for me personally, I have a power through type default mode and go alone, go on my own, just tough it out, type thing. And there comes moments where that doesn't work. And there comes moments where it's beyond your ability. And, for me personally, I don't like those moments because it's just very raw. It's very revealing. For some, even times there's even shame or just pain associated with it. I mean, Jairus' situation is a little different because it's a sickness, it's an illness. But he
But
has
there's a
he's wrestling.
humility in that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Yeah, yeah, he's got to wrestle with some stuff there. There's some long range implications for him about some other leaders talking to him later and going, "Hey, Darius, come here. We need to talk to you about something. Hey,
Right.
that promotion you're about to get.
Right.
Hey, that dream you had of maybe one day being a being something more than a layman synagogue leader. Yeah, I don't think so.
Right.
And so yeah, there's those kind of moments, and those are not the moments that anybody puts on a calendar and says, I want some of those. Those are the moments that you want to never happen, or if they happen, to be as short and quick and painless as possible. You just want them over. And I was just intrigued by the idea that in both moments, Jesus wanted in. Like he asks Jesus, and again, he asks him as a contemporary, but kind of not a contemporary. But
Hmm.
I love that verse that just says, so Jesus went with him. He went with him.
Right.
He was in. He was in. He wanted in. And then when the woman, she just wanted to touch him, get healed, and get out. And it was like, no, 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 I want in. I want into this situation. Who did this? Who was this that talked to me? And
Right.
he's not impersonal. He doesn't just want to, give you a snap of the fingers or a wave of the wand. He wants relationship. And he wanted that with Jairus, and he wanted that with this woman. And he took the time that was required to make it happen.
How would you describe faith from these two different stories? Because faith is it's an action. I mean, we see it lived out with Jairus, who may not know exactly what he's getting into with Jesus. And certainly this woman would have just heard stories. I mean, I doubt that she would have had any type of interaction with him or with somebody that did. So I guess, how would you describe faith?
I think they're both great examples of the confidence in things unseen definition that Hebrews 11 gives, because there was no power meter that was visible on Jesus that she could see. There was no real indicator that what she believed was real or true, but yet she aligned her life. And it's the object of who they put their faith in that makes this most significant here. I think sometimes we put the emphasis on the amount of faith we have, and I think the more important thing is who is the object of their faith. Well, in both cases it was Jesus. Well, when you even have a little bit of faith in Jesus, it goes a long, long way. And you see that in this story. So the object of their faith was what made this work, even more than the amount
Right.
of the faith.
So, like, I mean, I want to just keep drilling on this faith thing because I think we're all living in this. How do I have more faith, or how do I live it out? Jesus was literally there. They saw him. They walked up to him. Were able to touch his cloak. I mean, for us today, I think that a lot of us are having that same question of what does it look like to live out faith.
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm necessarily asking Jesus for. I don't know what the woman, like you said, was thinking was going to happen when she got there. So, I mean, help me take a next step on my faith journey, I guess, is
Yeah,
what I'm asking.
yeah. I think it's faith is always more about who than how or what. It's about Jesus. And one of my statements that you've heard me say many, many times is that Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And that true. It's like at the center of the Christian faith, you're going to find a belly button. It's a person. It's someone inviting you into a relationship. And it's not memorize this, don't do that. At the center of the Christian experience is Jesus himself. And you're going to find hands and feet, and you're going to find a person in the middle. And it's not impersonal. It's a person. It's a real relationship. And so one of the things that maybe could help is who or what am I putting my faith in? So not just how do I have more faith, but how do I maybe examine where else I'm putting faith, whether it's in money or health or reputation or any pedigree, any number of things, job position, and recognizing those in and of themselves may not be bad things, but it's easy to put faith in those and to use those in times uh, of life that are easy. But when times get hard, often those have they don't do anything. I mean,
Right.
Jairus was an influential guy. He had a lot of power, a lot of sway, maybe even a lot of money. It didn't matter in this moment. He was equalized with the very destitute woman who's also in this story, in her need, for Christ. So I think the object is more valuable than the amount of faith, and I think keeping the object of our faith on point is most
Right.
important.
I mean, I do think it's interesting that there's a crowd surrounding Jesus, and they miss who is actually in their midst, right? Like, and yet this woman fights her way through because she knows who he is and knows what he could potentially do, and so she does everything in her power, I guess, to get there. I don't know. I think we could keep talking about that. I want to keep moving on. Um, do you think do you think Jesus knew that woman was there? Like, do you think he felt like, I mean, like in this Jesus-y kind of like,
Yeah,
I don't know how to describe
yeah,
it, but like, do you think
yeah.
he knew that once he started this journey with Jairus that she was going to come into his path as well?
Yeah, I do think so, and I think that that's a great theological question that opens up, this free will versus and the whole predestination of events, type conversation. That's a really fun one to have. I think he opens himself up to our responses to him in that way. But did he know he's going to be there? I liken it to the Samaritan woman in John 4, where it talks about Jesus saying he had to go to Samaria.
Mm.
And, that's a really out of place statement because it wasn't on the way. He didn't have to go to Samaria. He went out of his way to go there. And I think he went out of his way because he wanted to have that particular conversation with that woman. And he wanted to teach some stuff not only to her, but to his followers as well. So, yeah, I think he knew what this would be, and maybe even that's why he paused a bit, because he knew what he was going to do for Jairus, but he wanted to justify and make significant this woman in this moment
Right.
too, even though it made Jairus wait a bit. And as a parent, you're going, did him delaying, I don't know, did him delaying too long with this woman. We get a snapshot of how it went down with Mark's description, but it might have taken a little bit of time.
Right.
Did that much of a delay affect the timeline at all of the daughter dying? I don't know, but you can imagine Jairus getting a little antsy,
Right.
going, okay, I got his attention finally, and he's with me and he's following me, and now we get stopped, and we're getting
Right.
held up here. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Well, even you talking about Jairus took this huge kind of leap of faith to go outside of his socio group and said, whatever happens, I'm going to take the fall or risk because I want to see him. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you're right. Like
Yeah,
everything
now he's
kind of gets
potentially
altered.
lost his reputation. He's lost his reputation and lost his daughter. You
Right.
know, yeah,
So
yeah,
I
tough,
think
tough
one,
moment. I mean, that's a moment that you don't want. It's not one you
right,
put on the calendar.
right. But Jesus wants in.
He wants into that moment, and he wants to do something in that moment that you may not want to go down quite like that, or you might not have wanted it in the way it was. But um, yeah, he wants in, and he wants to do
Right.
some work there. He wants to do some work.
So some of the work that Jesus does in the story, and I appreciate what you were able to share in your message because there's so much. I mean, I feel like you and I could talk for hours, and I could ask you a billion questions about this story because there's just so much, so many layers. But one of the layers to this story is dignity. Like Jesus
Mm,
brings
yeah.
dignity to a woman that's unclean. He brings dignity to, Mark calls her a daughter, right? The
Mhm.
Jairus's daughter. So he makes specific
Yeah.
word choices to make sure he ties in daughter for the Jairus and daughter for this woman. Tell me about dignity in the gospel, like because
Man, yeah, I think he does it. Yeah, it's a great word. I think he does it for both. I think he dignifies the seeker of Jairus. You know, Jairus would represent a little more of an up and outer than a down and outer, but um, you know, he dignifies him. He gives him time. The woman, for sure. You know, calling her daughter. I mean, this is a gal who had a social standing that was just in tatters, and in shame and embarrassment, and couldn't go out without without just, I mean, her self image being assaulted uh, every time she went out. And you know, we often refer to this story. You know, you got Cyrus and his daughter, but there's really another daughter in the story, and it's a woman. I mean, she's a grown woman, but I think it's just that's a dignifying title that's given to her. In a moment where the leader was with Jesus, the important guy was with Jesus, he stops and dignifies this woman, and I think it's significant. And I think it speaks to the the value of each person. I think it speaks to God's love for all people, no matter their background. I think, yeah, it's absolutely a celebration of life in every form, in every representation. It dignifies women, which is even more significant in that day and culture than it would have been even in ours today. I mean, it was that he would stop this procession of a influential man for this woman who's on the fringes of society is pretty powerful.
yeah, and you saying fringes, I mean, you're being generous to who she was and to what she was viewed. Um, I think I don't think I'm going out on a limb too much. You know, we see the disciples at one point trying to push children away from Jesus. We see
Yeah,
the disciples at one point, saying to Jesus with the Samaritan woman, like, "Bro, what are you doing here? Like, we got to
yeah,
get out." So, like, I think
yeah,
we can imagine that if they saw her coming, they would have done what they could to stop her
yeah,
from interacting with Jesus. So it
yeah,
makes the kind of challenging
yeah,
question for you and me, like, and maybe you can help shed some light into this. How do we love those that society deems unclean?
yeah. No, it's a great question. Philip Yancey wrote a book several years ago called "The Jesus I Never Knew," and one of the statements that he made about Jesus and is that in society, whether 2,000 years ago or today, that within certain groups of people, there are unwritten signs and almost like above a doorway where it says no undesirables allowed, you know, here.
Right,
And we've all been places where you could feel that, you know, where you just felt like, yeah, they don't let people that aren't cleaned up or don't appear to be cleaned up here, or
right,
that's not what this is about. And he said this, and he said one the thing that was remarkable about Jesus was that he came to announce that instead of no undesirables allowed, that in the kingdom of God there are no undesirables. Everybody's welcome. That everybody is in. And I think that causes you and I to have to work through all of our people, no matter where you're at socioeconomically. We all have presuppositions, and we all have kind of these places or people that we are more comfortable with, and people that we are less comfortable with. And you know, many times we're prone to judge or to label or to identify other people who don't like us, don't look like us, or act like us. It's been said before that we often demonize what's different, and it's really easy to do that. I've caught myself doing it. I'm sure you have too. And it's not just that you notice, hey, they're different than me. It's like, well, they're wrong because they're different than me.
right.
And you know, you just see Jesus throughout his ministry. Um, Instead of being made unclean by associating with people like that, he, in reverse, he made them clean. And that's
Right.
certainly true in this story. You know, instead of scandalizing a man of faith, he firmed up a man of faith. Instead of being made unclean, he made this woman clean.
Yeah. Um, well, I've got two more questions for you, and I don't know. Feel free to interject, or if you have more thoughts that
Sure.
you want to throw in. At the very end of the story, Jesus does something, and he's done it before. He tells everybody in the house, "Don't tell people." What
Yeah.
you've just seen, don't tell anybody. I, that always confuses me. I'm sure other people are confused by
Yeah.
that. Why do you think he's doing that?
Well, you know what? There's, I mean, this is called the Messianic secret, and it's something that shows up a number of times, especially in Mark. It's actually out there quite a bit. Um, you know what? I don't, here's my couple answers. There's a playful side of me that wonders if he says it and winks. Like there's a part of me that wonders if he does that, because you like, how do you not tell that story? Like how do
Right,
you, I mean, we have
right,
it right here because somebody couldn't stop talking about it. Somebody
right.
had to tell the story. So there's a part of me that says, did he do it with a wink? But the other part of me says, man, Jesus was literally manipulating events so that I mean, he was not, he would say it this way: my life was not taken from me, I laid it down. And I think if you take this view and start looking through the Gospels this way, you can see him literally managing the events so that he can get killed on Passover Friday. Uh, and I mean that there's times when he would get more public, and then he could feel it was getting too crazy, and he would
Right,
withdraw, and then
right,
he would do ministry for a while, and then he would withdraw. And then there comes a point where it's just all gas, no brakes, and he's just like, okay,
right,
we're good now. And
right.
and you know, God, and I think His infinite wisdom was using human time and events and history and the significance of all the Old Testament stuff. I mean, just so many different things that were fulfilled. I think you can actually see Him messing with people. Almost like, this thing isn't moving fast enough, so I need to go irritate. I need to go irritate somebody.
I need
Of
to let my
course,
buddy Lazarus die so I
in
can,
a
right,
holy way, right? In a
right,
holy way,
right,
never non-sinful way. But I need to go pick a fight with a synagogue leader so that I can get on that cross in a month. So
right.
that's maybe
No,
a
I think
slightly
that's
crude
super
version
intriguing.
of it,
Yeah,
but I think it's a real. I mean, I just feel like when I read it, I can see it happening. I can see him um, very strategically making his move. He was playing chess. Everybody else was playing checkers.
yeah. All right. So my last question, and with Northview, we're all about helping people take their next step with God. And
Mhm.
so, I love getting to talk to Brian a week ago, you this week. Even like I know how I go into messages. Like we all craft them differently, and we have our different perspectives. For you, how do you approach a text in a way that would help anybody listening study the Bible? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because I think like one thing I love about you is you have a very analytical view of the scriptures, and you can see progressions that I definitely don't see. And so like, maybe in a practical way, just to end this, how do you, as you're approaching a topic to preach on, does that affect the way that you study it?
yeah, definitely. There's times when, like, this particular, we had a topical lean on this one, and so we kind of had a loose theme of the kind of stories that lean towards the uncomfortable, and where an uncomfortable moment turned into a transformational moment. So this particular story or this text, we came into it with a little bit. We're not trying to, the difference between eisegesis and exegesis. We're not trying to create meaning from our theme. That just because we like the theme, we're going to make the story say what we want to say.
Hmm.
We, but there's these stories that can be, they've got multiple teaching points, they've got multiple angles that could be significant, and so we kind of leveraged the awkwardness angle of this, and then it kind of also merged a little bit too with this theme of chaos and confusion, and trusting God in the midst of really hard and dark times. That's kind of
Hmm.
been on our, if it's not on the front burner, it's always on the back burner
Right.
for the last 2 months, right? For everybody. So, you certainly, my ears and eyes were, I think, were a little bit perked up to some of those particular trends or the things in the story that maybe spoke to those places, because we just we're hearing more a lot from people that that's where they are. And just a reminder that God's word is there for us, that we have, as one author said, Wayne Cordero, all these divine mentors who are teaching us, and we got people who want to speak to us, and they want to share. So I mean, God is the ultimate divine mentor, but He's got these stories
Right.
that are there for us to really be able to learn from. So in this particular one, I the idea of him wanting into the story, uh, just kind of was what was capturing me. And so
Hmm.
rather than, I just saw similarity rather than difference in this story. It was almost like, compare and contrast, but a little more of like, let's find this, like, what is the same? How are they the same? These are two very, one's man, one's woman, one's rich, one's poor. They're both suffering. They
Right.
both are they're both desperate. They both fell on their knees. There were some
Yeah.
really cool things that tied them together in this story. And so then it kind of started moving towards a singular point that might be more of a refrain that would get repeated,
Yeah.
through the message.
No, dude, that's gold. That's gold. And I think that would be a cool thing that we could do maybe another podcast on, between a few of us. How do we approach the scripture? How do we
Yeah,
approach,
yeah.
um, whatever that might look like. So cool. Any other thoughts, closing remarks?
No, no, I
No.
can't think of, I can't. Um,
All right,
no,
I
this
got
has been
one
really,
question.
really.
All right, I got one question. If you, in the next 10 years, you could only have one of your sports teams win a title, which one would you pick? And
Oh,
only one could do it within that 10 years.
it would be Iowa Hawkeye football. It would absolutely. If you had to, like, if you want to say what is the mountaintop of the mountaintop,
That's fair.
that would be
That's
it. But
fair.
that's probably not going to happen. So, you know,
You
um,
never know. You never know.
uh,
10
the
years.
Bears
Anything could happen
might
in
have
10
more
years.
luck winning the Super Bowl. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Man, thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
you
It's
bet, man.
so
You bet.
awesome getting to talk.
Yep.
Friends, thank you for joining in with us. There are so many ways that you can continue to connect with Northview. Go to northviewchristian.org and you can find tons of content for online services. We have kids resources there. We have different online events that are taking place. And if there's any way that we can come alongside of you, pray with you, there are email addresses there that you can send those out, and one of our staff members will be there to help you. Go to northview.online.church. On Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:45, we will have services there, and hope to catch you alongside of us. Thanks for hanging out. See you guys.
Yep. Thanks, guys. See ya.